Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive difference, the gap between just letting sound hit your eardrums and actually listening to understand. It sounds simple, right? Well, as we'll discover, it's actually one of the most complex cognitive tasks our brains do all day.
So let's kick things off with a pretty tough question. Are you actually listening to people, or are you just waiting for your turn to speak? Ouch, right? It's a question that really exposes those subconscious habits we all have. I want you to be totally honest with yourself as we go through this material.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the listening illusion. Second, the 3 levels of listening. Third, the Hurrier model. Fourth, active listening in practice. And finally, we'll wrap up with the power of being heard. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The listening illusion. Why our brains constantly get distracted.
The root of all this distraction? It literally comes down to our biology. On average, a person speaks at about 125 to 175 words per minute, but your brain is racing along at 400 to 800 words per minute. That is a massive biological gap, and it leaves you with all this extra cognitive real estate. So what do we do with that spare brain power? We daydream, we side process, or let's be honest, we secretly plan out exactly what we're going to say next.
And because of that extra mental capacity, we end up developing a whole menu of terrible habits. We interrupt. We completely skew information to fit what we already believe. We even do this thing called narcissistic listening, which is basically hijacking the conversation to one-up the speaker. Like, they mention having a rough day, and suddenly, bam, you're giving them a whole monologue about how yours was way worse. Or, my personal favorite, pseudo-listening. You know, just giving those polite little fake nods while your brain is a million miles away. Now take a look at this textbook example of aggressive listening. Quote, "Every time you come up with some idea of the week, you get so excited about it, but you ever follow through with it? No. We'll be eating salsa from the store next year." Yikes. This perfectly captures what happens when a partner waits for a totally innocent comment, like wanting to plant a salsa garden, just to ambush the speaker and attack their character. They aren't listening to understand. They're literally just listening to attack.
All right, moving on to Section 2, the 3 levels of listening, where we ascend from self-focus to true understanding.
Think of listening like a multi-story building. Down in the basement, we've got Level 1, listening to speak. This is completely self-focused. You're just itching to jump in with your own story. One floor up is Level 2, listening to hear. This is a bit better. You're actually paying attention, maybe asking a quick follow-up. But the penthouse, the summit we actually want to reach, is Level 3, listening to understand. This is where you become highly inquisitive and empathetic. You aren't just absorbing the words, you're hunting for the deeper meaning behind them.
The daily habits between the two are like night and day. An effective listener is always actively searching for meaning. They shut down distractions, and crucially, they withhold their judgment. Ineffective listeners? Well, they tend to just tune out anything they find boring, silently judge the speaker's delivery, and spend the entire time cooking up their rebuttals.
Section 3. The Hurrier model. The 6-part mechanics of active listening.
This acronym is an absolute game changer. It maps the exact journey of a message through your brain. First, hearing the physical sound, then understanding the literal meaning, remembering it, which is essential for building on an idea, interpreting the emotional subtext behind the words, evaluating it critically but fairly, and finally, responding in a competent way. It's literally a step-by-step roadmap for your brain.
I really want to zoom in on that evaluating stage for a second. Evaluating means you're assessing a message thoughtfully and objectively without jumping to conclusions. And this is exactly where most of us trip up. Practicing the suspension of our own judgment until the person has completely finished speaking takes serious emotional intelligence. It's so hard to just sit back and evaluate instead of instantly criticizing, but it's totally essential.
Section 4. Active listening in practice. Let's look at the actual tools of the trade. When you look at expert negotiators, they use very specific practical tactics to dial down tension. First up, minimal encouragers. These are just simple nods or a quick to keep the speaker flowing. Next are TEDS questions, which stands for tell, explain, describe, or show. These are incredibly powerful because they invite the person to share a full narrative. They also use emotional labels. Saying something like, "You sound frustrated," instead of arguing the facts, instantly shows that you truly grasp what they're feeling.
But honestly, the single most powerful tool in your kit? The effective pause. Literally just intentional silence. Now, sitting in silence can feel super awkward at first, but it is pure magic. It creates the exact space someone needs to move past their initial, guarded response. It gives them time to think without feeling totally rushed. Seriously, try pausing for just a few seconds the next time someone finishes a sentence. You will not believe the extra details they end up sharing.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the power of being heard, and its profound impact on human mental health.
Psychological research shows that feeling heard isn't just a vague feeling. It's made up of 5 core elements. Voice, giving someone space to speak. Attention, giving them your absolute full focus. Empathy, showing emotional understanding. Respect, taking their feelings seriously. And common ground, reflecting shared meaning. The big takeaway here is how fragile this all is. If even one piece is missing, like say you give them space to speak, but you're secretly glancing at your phone, bam, that emotional distance immediately creeps right back in.
To put this cognitive load into perspective, just look at the data around untreated hearing loss. When a brain has to exhaust itself just trying to decode physical sound, we see a massive 53% spike in stress. Social isolation jumps to 47, anxiety symptoms hit 42. When the brain struggles to process communication, or when a person just feels chronically misunderstood, the psychological toll is absolutely brutal, and they end up withdrawing entirely.
And that brings us to this incredibly profound truth. In moments of crisis, people rarely need the right words. They need someone willing to stay, listen, and not turn away. At the end of the day, active listening isn't just a neat trick, it's a life-saving skill. It cuts right through emotional overload, it drastically lowers anxiety, and it builds the safety required for everything from fixing a tense workplace dispute all the way to crisis recovery. You don't always have to have the magical fix, you just have to be fully present.
So, I'm going to leave you at this final, provocative thought to carry into your very next conversation. Are you just waiting for your turn to speak, or are you ready to finally listen? What kind of listener are you going to choose to be today? Thanks so much for tuning into this explainer. I really hope this transforms how you communicate from here on out.